Pick up those papers, Clara! You can't do anything right. Liam, look at her!
Hello, before I tell you who I am, before I tell you my name or how this nightmare began, I want you to imagine something. Imagine walking back into a house for less than 30 seconds, just to grab a pair of reading glasses you accidentally left behind. Now imagine hearing your own daughter begging someone to stop. Imagine standing only a few feet away, while the people she trusted the most slowly destroyed her dignity, her confidence, and her life. And realizing that if you stepped forward too soon, you might save her for one day, but lose her forever. That was the moment everything changed. Because what I overheard wasn't simply a cruel family argument. It was the first crack in a lie so enormous that it reached from one luxurious mansion all the way into billion-dollar boardrooms, hidden bank accounts, forged signatures, and a conspiracy designed to send my daughter to federal prison, while the people responsible walked away richer than ever. They believed I was powerless. They believed I was an old widow who spent her days repairing engines in a tiny workshop. They laughed at my old clothes. They mocked my old Honda. They even offered to buy my worthless little shop, as an act of charity. What they never imagined was that every dollar they earned, every factory they operated, and every luxury they enjoyed depended on one company. A company they didn't know belonged to me. And when they decided to destroy my daughter, they unknowingly declared war against the one person who could destroy everything they had built. My name is Eleanor Holloway. I'm 62 years old, and this happened just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. Everything I'm about to tell you is the most painful chapter of my life. It's a story about betrayal disguised as love, about secrets hidden behind beautiful smiles, about a mother who almost lost her only child, and about why sometimes justice doesn't arrive wearing a police badge. Sometimes, justice arrives wearing grease-stained work gloves. The morning had already been emotional before everything fell apart. I had spent nearly 3 hours baking Clara's favorite apple pie. She loved it when she was little, whenever she scraped her knees or had a difficult day at school. Richard, my late husband, and I would bake together while she sat on the kitchen counter stealing slices of fresh apples before they ever reached the crust. Even after Richard passed away nearly 12 years earlier, I never stopped making that pie. Some traditions are stronger than grief. I carried it carefully into the Vance estate that afternoon, smiling politely as one of the housekeepers opened the massive front doors. Every time I visited that mansion, I felt like I was entering a museum instead of a family home. Everything looked expensive, everything looked perfect, but nothing felt warm. The marble floors reflected the sunlight so brightly they almost hurt my eyes. The enormous crystal chandelier sparkled overhead, fresh flowers sat in imported Italian vases. Everything was polished, everything was immaculate. Everything except the people living inside. Clara greeted me with a tired smile that barely reached her eyes. "Mum," she whispered while hugging me. "You didn't have to bring pie again." "I know," I smiled. "But I wanted to." She squeezed my hand just a little longer than usual. At the time, I thought she was simply exhausted. Now I know she was silently asking for help. Liam appeared a few seconds later wearing an expensive tailored suit despite working from home that afternoon. He barely looked at me. "Afternoon," he muttered while checking messages on his phone. "Hello, Liam." He nodded once before disappearing into his office without another word. That had become normal. When Clara first introduced him years earlier, he had been charming, confident, respectful. The kind of young man every mother hoped would cherish her daughter. Or so I believed, but wealth has an interesting way of revealing people's true character. As Liam climbed higher in business, kindness slowly disappeared. His compliments became criticism. His patience became irritation. His confidence became arrogance. Unfortunately, by the time Clara realized the transformation, she was already trapped inside the marriage. Still, every visit I made, she insisted everything was fine. "He just has a lot of pressure. Business is stressful. He doesn't really mean it." I wanted to believe her. Every mother wants to believe her child is happy. Before leaving, I hugged Clara one more time. "And than usual." "You okay?" I asked softly. She forced another smile. "I'm just tired." I kissed her forehead. "I love you." "I love you too, Mom." I drove home, or at least, I thought I did. About 15 minutes later, while stopping at a red light, I reached into my purse. My reading glasses were gone. I sighed. Of course. They were probably sitting beside the porcelain lamp in the Vance foyer. Turning around felt annoying, but it seemed like a harmless inconvenience. If only I had known, those missing glasses were about to expose the darkest secret of my daughter's life. The estate looked quiet when I returned. Several luxury vehicles remained parked outside. I assumed Liam was still working. using the spare key Clara had secretly given me years ago, just in case. I quietly unlocked the front door. The house seemed empty. I stepped inside. Then I heard it. A sharp voice echoed from deeper inside the house. You can't even do something this simple. The words stopped me cold. I immediately recognized the speaker. Beatrice Vance, Liam's mother. I moved quietly toward the living room. Years of working around noisy machinery had taught me how to move without making unnecessary sound. As I reached the stone archway, I remained hidden behind one of the decorative columns. What I saw nearly broke me. Clara was kneeling on the polished marble floor. Sheets of paper were scattered everywhere around her. Some were crumpled, others had coffee stains. Her hands shook so violently she struggled to gather them. Standing over her, Beatrice Vance watched with complete satisfaction. She wasn't helping. She wasn't comforting. She was enjoying it. A girl from your background should wake up every morning thanking God my son even looked at you. Her voice was cold enough to freeze the room. You grew up in a garage. You have no education compared to this family. You have no class. You embarrass us every time you open your mouth. Each sentence landed like another slap. Clara never looked up. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'll organize everything again. Sorry? Beatrice laughed. Sorry doesn't fix incompetence. Then something even worse happened. Beatrice deliberately kicked another stack of documents across the floor. Hundreds of pages scattered again. Start over. Clara quietly bent down once more. Not one complaint, not one tear, only silence. I could hardly breathe. Every instinct inside me screamed to walk into that room, to grab my daughter, to pull her out of that nightmare. But before I could move, another voice joined the conversation. Liam. He had been sitting comfortably on an expensive leather sofa the entire time. A glass of bourbon rested casually in his hand. His eyes remained fixed on his phone. He hadn't even bothered looking at his wife. My mother is right, his voice was calm, cold, almost bored. You create problems faster than anyone I've ever met. Clara finally looked toward him. For just a second, hope flashed across her face. She expected him to defend her. Instead, he crushed what little hope remained. You've become an embarrassment. He slowly took another sip of bourbon. I'm honestly tired of carrying both you and your mother's lower-class baggage. My hands curled into fists. I had tolerated Liam's arrogance for years. But hearing those words directed at my daughter, every protective instinct inside me came alive. Then Liam mentioned me. And speaking of your mother, he smirked. You need to convince Eleanor to sell that pathetic little workshop. I've had enough of people discovering my mother-in-law still repairs car engines. I'll offer her $50,000. That's more than that place is worth. She should be grateful. Clara quietly shook her head. It's my father's workshop. It means everything to Mom. It isn't for sale. Liam finally looked up. His expression was pure contempt. Everything has a price. If she refuses, she's making life harder for everyone. He leaned forward. And frankly, I'm tired of pretending that little junkyard isn't embarrassing. Those words echoed inside my head. Embarrassing. That workshop wasn't just a building. Richard and I had built it together. We spent decades sacrificing vacations, working weekends, missing holidays, building something from absolutely nothing. It represented every dream we'd ever shared. It represented Richard. It represented our family. And this spoiled man, who had inherited nearly everything in his life, called it embarrassing. Clara whispered again. I'm sorry. Liam sighed dramatically. That's your biggest problem. You apologize instead of fixing things. He stood up, walked over, bent down close enough that only she could hear. But I still heard every word. If you can't convince your mother, maybe I married the wrong woman. Clara froze. I watched the color disappear from her face. There it was. The sentence designed to control her. Not yelling, not violence, just psychological cruelty. The kind that slowly convinces someone they're never good enough, that they're lucky anyone loves them, that leaving would be impossible. I had seen this before. Not in my own marriage. Richard had adored me until his last breath. But I had seen women trapped exactly like this. Strong women. Smart women. Reduced to doubting everything they believe. Because emotional abuse rarely begins with screaming. It begins with tiny cuts. Every single day. Until the victim no longer remembers who they used to be. I realized something horrifying. My daughter wasn't simply unhappy. She was trapped. And she didn't even know it yet. I didn't walk into that living room. Not because I was afraid. Not because I lacked the courage. I stayed hidden because, in that single heartbreaking moment, I realized something most parents never want to admit. If I stormed in and rescued Clara, she would probably defend them. She would say Liam was under stress. She would insist Beatrice didn't really mean those cruel words. She would beg me not to make things worse. Victims don't always recognize their victims. especially when they've spent years being convinced they're the problem. I couldn't save my daughter by fighting her battle for one afternoon. I had to expose the truth so completely that even she couldn't deny it anymore. Quietly, I stepped backward. I slipped out the front door without making a sound. The cool afternoon air hit my face, but it did nothing to calm the storm raging inside me. By the time I reached my old Honda, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. The kind of rage that doesn't explode. The kind that becomes perfectly calm, because calm people make dangerous decisions. I closed the car door, locked it, then stared back at the enormous mansion. From the outside, it looked like the picture of success. Perfect landscaping, luxury vehicles, beautiful architecture. People driving past would probably envy the family living there. They had no idea that inside those walls, a young woman was slowly losing herself. I reached into my purse and picked up my phone. There was only one person I trusted with what needed to happen next. Julian Hayes. He had worked beside Richard and me for almost 25 years. He wasn't just our chief operating officer, he was family. The phone rang once. Eleanor. His calm voice immediately answered. Is everything all right? I looked through my windshield toward the Vance estate. No. There was a brief silence. Julian knew me well enough to understand one word was enough. What happened? They've been abusing Clara. Another pause. His voice became noticeably colder. Tell me everything. I described exactly what I had witnessed. Every insult, every humiliation, every cruel word Liam had spoken. Julian never interrupted. When I finished, he let out a slow breath. I've suspected something wasn't right. What do you mean? Clara stopped smiling a long time ago. I closed my eyes. I should have noticed sooner. No, Julian answered gently. People who suffer emotional abuse become experts at hiding it. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. I've protected her my entire life. And now she's living inside a prison. Julian waited. He knew I wasn't finished. Finally I spoke again. It's time. His voice lowered. Are you sure? I nodded even though he couldn't see me. They declared war the moment they decided my daughter was disposable. I won't let them touch her again. Another long silence followed. Then Julian asked the question he already knew the answer to. What are your orders? I looked once more at the mansion. Every window reflected the afternoon sunlight. Behind one of those windows, Clara was probably still picking papers off the floor. I felt something inside me harden. Terminate every active contract with Vance Manufacturing. Julian inhaled sharply. Every single one. No exceptions. They received no extensions, no grace periods, no negotiations. His keyboard began clicking immediately. You understand what this means? I do. They depend on Holloway Global for nearly 70% of their annual production. I know. If we pull out today, they collapse. I answered without hesitation. Julian stopped typing. Eleanor. They'll be bankrupt within weeks. They should have thought about that before destroying my daughter. Understood. His voice had become completely professional now. A finance, supply chain, and every regional office. I nodded. Also call risk management. I want every outstanding invoice collected immediately. No payment plans, no delays, everything due. Today? It'll be done. Before hanging up, Julian quietly asked one more question. Should we prepare the board? I looked back toward the mansion one last time. No. Not yet. I have a feeling this is much bigger than a cruel mother-in-law. I'm starting to think someone is hiding something. I think you're right, Julian replied. Then the call ended. I started driving home. Traffic moved slowly through Charlotte, but I barely noticed. My mind kept replaying Clara's face. She hadn't looked angry. She hadn't looked surprised. She had looked accustomed to it. That realization hurt more than anything else. No one becomes that emotionally numb overnight. That kind of silence takes years. I remembered the little girl who used to run around our workshop wearing oversized safety goggles. She loved pretending she was helping Richard repair old pickup trucks. She'd proudly tighten one loose bolt and announce she had fixed the whole engine. Richard would laugh every single time. Best mechanic in North Carolina. She believed him. Back then, nothing could convince her she wasn't capable. Somewhere along the way, someone stole that confidence, and I intended to find out exactly who. By the time I reached home, the first reports were already arriving. Julian worked faster than anyone I'd ever known. An encrypted email appeared on my private tablet. Contrasi termentios compluti. Every supply agreement. Cancelled. Every pending shipment. Frozen. Every line of credit. Suspended. Every future negotiation. Closed indefinitely. Within minutes, another message arrived. Vance Manufacturing requesting emergency meeting. I smiled for the first time all day, not because anyone was suffering. Because arrogant people rarely expect consequences. Liam believed the world revolved around him. For the first time in his life, He was about to discover it didn't. I had barely poured myself a cup of tea when another notification appeared. This one came directly from Julian. Liam has called 17 times. I ignored it. 5 minutes later, 23 calls. Another. He's demanding immediate access to the chairwoman. Still, I ignored every message. Because Liam had no idea who the chairwoman actually was. To him, she was simply some mysterious billionaire executive hiding inside a downtown skyscraper. He had absolutely no idea. The woman he wanted to negotiate with was the same poor mechanic he had insulted less than an hour earlier. Late that evening, someone knocked on my front door, not politely. 3 loud, impatient bangs. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, Beatrice Vance stood outside wearing a designer cashmere coat and expensive sunglasses despite the fading evening light. She didn't smile. She didn't greet me. She walked inside as though she owned the house. My goodness. She looked around with obvious disgust. I'll never understand how people live like this. I calmly closed the door. My home has always been enough for me. She ignored my response. Instead, she reached into her handbag. I almost forgot. She tossed my reading glasses onto the kitchen counter. You left these at our house. No apology, no kindness, just contempt. Then her eyes wandered across my kitchen. They stopped on an elegant fountain pen resting beside several legal documents. It was a gift from one of our European partners. Worth more than most people spent on a new car. Beatrice picked it up, turned it over, then laughed. Oh dear. A fake luxury pen. She shook her head. You really do enjoy pretending. She casually dropped it back onto the counter with enough force to scratch the wood. I hope it wasn't expensive. I said nothing. She stepped closer. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to help you. I almost laughed. Help me. Liam has had an unfortunate business setback today. He needs additional capital. He still intends to purchase your little workshop. I convinced him to keep his generous offer. $50,000. She smiled as though she were offering me the opportunity of a lifetime. You should accept before he changes his mind. I looked directly into her eyes. What if I don't sell? Her smile disappeared. That would be unfortunate. You don't understand how powerful this family is. We always get what we want. I nodded slowly. I'll think about it. She frowned. No. You'll sign. You should feel honored that someone like Liam is willing to rescue you from that miserable garage. She turned toward the door. Then stopped. Oh, and tell Clara to stop embarrassing herself. She needs to learn her place. The front door slammed shut behind her. Silence filled the house. I looked at Richard's old photograph sitting beside the fireplace. He smiled back exactly the way he always had. Steady, confident, honest. I picked up the picture frame. I think it's finally time, I whispered. I've stayed quiet long enough. Outside, Beatrice drove away completely convinced she had intimidated an old widow. She never realized she had just threatened the woman who held the future of her entire family's empire in her hands. And before the next sunrise, everything they believed was untouchable would begin to fall apart. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was worried about the Vance family. I couldn't have cared less about what happened to them. I was worried about Clara. For years, I had believed she was building a happy life. Every holiday dinner, every birthday, every anniversary, she smiled, she laughed. She always insisted everything was wonderful. Now I realized those smiles had been carefully rehearsed. How many nights had she cried herself to sleep? How many times had she hidden bruises that couldn't be seen, because they were left on her heart instead of her skin? Those questions haunted me until sunrise. At exactly 6:30 the next morning, my private phone rang. Only a handful of people had that number. It was Julian. Good morning, Eleanor. It doesn't sound like a good morning. It isn't. I sat up immediately. What happened? Liam Vance arrived at Holloway Global headquarters 40 minutes ago. I looked at the clock. He got there before sunrise. Wes has been demanding an emergency meeting with the chairwoman. I smiled faintly. And we've kept him waiting. For how long? Long enough to remind him he isn't as important as he thinks. Despite everything happening, I couldn't help smiling. Julian always understood exactly how to handle arrogant people. What's his condition? He looks exhausted. He hasn't stopped making phone calls. Our reception desk says he's already contacted 12 different banks this morning. And no one is extending additional credit. I walked toward my bedroom window. The morning sun stretched across the neighborhood. Birds sang outside as though the world hadn't changed overnight. But for Liam, his world was already collapsing. Any update on Vance Manufacturing? Julian answered immediately. Their stock has already dropped 11% before the market officially opens. Several suppliers suspended deliveries after hearing Holloway Global pulled out. The board members are asking questions. And investors? Panicking? I nodded slowly. Good. Julian hesitated. Eleanor, there's something else. His voice changed. It became more serious. What? We've started reviewing Vance Manufacturing's financial records, and there are transactions that don't make sense. I frowned. What kind of transactions? Millions of dollars have disappeared. I stopped walking. Disappeared. They're being transferred somewhere. We just don't know where yet. My instincts immediately came alive. I'd spent 35 years building businesses. Numbers always tell the truth. People don't. If money is disappearing, someone's stealing it. I believe so. Keep digging. I already have our forensic accounting team working on it. Good. And Julian? Yes. Don't let Liam see me. Won't. I want him desperate. I already is. Meanwhile, across the city, Liam sat inside Holloway Global's magnificent corporate lobby. Everything around him screamed success. Towering glass walls, Italian marble floors, massive digital displays showing factories across North America. Employees walked confidently through the building. Executives entered private elevators using security cards. It was a different world from the one Liam thought he understood. He had visited before, but never as a desperate man. The receptionist smiled professionally. Mr. Vance, I'm afraid the chairwoman is unavailable. Liam slammed both hands onto the polished counter. I've been sitting here for over an hour. I understand. I have an appointment. I'm sorry. The chairwoman canceled all unscheduled meetings. This isn't unscheduled. I'm afraid her calendar says otherwise. His jaw tightened. You don't understand. My company has done business with Holloway Global for nearly 15 years. We value that history. Then let me upstairs. I'm sorry. That's impossible. Liam took a deep breath. He tried another strategy. I'll wait. Of course. Another 30 minutes passed. Then another. Every employee walking through the lobby noticed him. Some recognized him immediately. Others whispered quietly. The powerful CEO of Vance Manufacturing, reduced to waiting like everyone else. Finally, Julian Hayes appeared. His perfectly tailored navy suit looked immaculate as always. He walked confidently across the marble floor. Every employee greeted him respectfully. Good morning, Mr. Hayes. Morning. He stopped directly in front of Liam. Mr. Vance. Liam immediately stood. Finally. Someone important. I've been trying to reach someone all morning. Julian remained calm. I've been informed. We need to talk. I agree. Liam relaxed slightly. I knew Holloway wouldn't destroy a partnership over one misunderstanding. Julian looked directly into his eyes. This isn't a misunderstanding. Liam's smile faded. What? Our contracts have been permanently terminated. Impossible. Our legal department finalized everything last night. There must be some mistake. There wasn't. Liam laughed nervously. Come on, this is business. We've worked together for years. Julian folded his hands calmly. And we're finished. Liam's confidence finally cracked. You can't do this. We already did. You'll destroy my company. Julian's expression never changed. The chairwoman considered that before making her decision. I need to speak with her. No. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Liam's voice became louder. No. I'll pay cash. No. I'll apologize. Julian looked at him quietly. For what? Liam hesitated. I don't know. Exactly. Silence. Then Julian leaned slightly closer. Our chairwoman has one rule. She refuses to do business with people who mistake arrogance for leadership. Liam stared. What does that even mean? It means, Julian smiled politely, have a nice day. Two security officers quietly approached. They weren't threatening. They simply stood nearby, waiting. Liam understood the message. His meeting was over. Without another word, he walked out. For the first time in his adult life, he had been powerless. From the executive observation balcony several floors above, I had watched the entire conversation. Hidden behind one-way privacy glass, Liam never looked up. He never imagined the woman making every decision was standing less than 50 feet away. I watched him walk through the revolving doors. His shoulders looked heavier than they had yesterday. His confidence had begun to disappear. But something bothered me. His panic seemed too intense. Companies recover from losing suppliers. Businesses survive difficult years. Yet Liam looked terrified. Not frustrated. Terrified. That meant only one thing. He wasn't afraid of bankruptcy. He was afraid of something bankruptcy would expose. I turned toward Julian after he entered my office. What aren't we seeing? He sat across from my desk. I've been wondering the same thing. He placed several folders onto the polished mahogany table. Our accountants discovered more unusual activity. I opened the first folder. Wire transfers, hidden accounts, consulting fees, offshore payments, millions of dollars. Every page created more questions. Ooh, approve these. That's the strange part. Every authorization bears Clara's digital signature. I immediately looked up. No. I know. Clara would never move money without telling me. It gets worse. Julian slid another document toward me, a company registration certificate. Printed across the top were 4 words, Blue Lantern Logistics. I've never heard of this company, neither had we. Julian continued. It was created 18 months ago. Sole owner, he pointed to the signature, Clara Holloway Vance. My heartbeat slowed. Something felt terribly wrong. That isn't possible. Exactly, Clara has never started another business. Our investigators confirmed that. So why is her name on every document? Julian looked grim. We're trying to answer that. I carefully studied every page. Something about the signatures bothered me. At first glance, they looked authentic. But after decades of signing corporate agreements myself, tiny details stood out. Pressure pun movement, letter spacing. Someone had copied Clara's signature. Repeatedly, very carefully, but not perfectly. I looked at Julian. Forgery. He nodded. Professional forgery. I slowly closed the folder. A terrible realization settled over me. This had never been about humiliating Clara. That was simply how they controlled her. The real objective was using her name, using her trust, using her innocence. Someone was building an enormous financial crime, and my daughter had become the perfect scapegoat. I looked toward the Charlotte skyline outside my office windows. I think we've only uncovered the first layer. Julian nodded. I agree. And if we're right? I finished quietly. Clara isn't just living with monsters. She's living with criminals. The moment I realized someone had forged Clara's signature, everything changed. Until then, I believed I was dealing with a cruel husband and an abusive mother-in-law. Now, I was looking at organized financial crime, and if my instincts were right, my daughter wasn't simply being controlled. She was being prepared to take the fall. I looked at Julian across the conference table. We need every document connected to Blue Lantern. He nodded. Our investigators are already on it. I want facts. Every bank, every contract, every email, every signature, every dollar. Julian immediately picked up his phone. Within minutes, the best forensic accountants, investigators, and corporate attorneys in Holloway Global were working on one company that officially didn't even exist. Blue Lantern Logistics. It sounded harmless, ordinary, forgettable, which was exactly why someone had chosen that name. 3 hours later, our conference room looked like the headquarters of a federal investigation. Whiteboards covered every wall, financial charts, bank transfers, corporate ownership structures, dozens of photographs. Every new discovery pointed towards something much darker. One of our investigators walked into the room carrying another folder. Eleanor, you need to see this. He spread several photographs across the table. Private jets, luxury resorts, expensive restaurants, a yacht in Monaco. At first, none of it made sense. Then I saw him, Liam, standing beside a blonde woman I'd never seen before. They weren't business partners. They weren't colleagues. The way he looked at her told me everything. I slowly picked up one photograph. They were kissing. Another, holding hands in Paris. Another, walking into a luxury hotel in Dubai. Julian quietly spoke. Her name is Chloe Mercer, senior executive at Apex Industries. According to our investigators, she's been Liam's mistress for almost 3 years. 3 years. My hands tightened around the photograph. 3 years. While Clara believed she was saving her marriage. While she blamed herself every time Liam came home angry. While she apologized for problems she never caused, he had already replaced her. She simply didn't know it. Another investigator entered carrying a laptop. We've traced the offshore accounts. He connected the computer to the large conference screen. Dozens of transactions appeared. Millions of dollars. Moving from Vance Manufacturing into Blue Lantern, then disappearing overseas. Julian pointed at the final destination, Cayman Islands. Everything ends here. Whose account? The investigator enlarged another document. The account owner appeared on the screen. Chloe Mercer Holdings. The room became silent. I leaned back slowly. So that's the plan. Julian nodded. Liam moves illegal debt into Blue Lantern. He forges Clara's signature. He steals company money. He transfers everything offshore. When authorities eventually investigate Blue Lantern Clara goes to prison. Liam claims ignorance and disappears with Chloe. No one spoke. The silence itself was horrifying. I thought about Clara sitting alone inside that enormous mansion. She probably still believed she could save her marriage. She had no idea her husband had already planned her destruction. I stood and walked toward the window. Charlotte stretched below. Thousands of people hurried through another ordinary afternoon. None of them knew that one young woman's entire future depended on what happened next. I finally spoke. We bring Clara here. Julian looked at me. Will she believe us? I don't know, but she deserves the truth. Instead of telling Clara everything over the phone, we created another story. Julian called her pretending to represent a financial institution. There are irregularities involving documents signed under your name. We need to meet privately. She sounded nervous. But she agreed. 2 hours later, she arrived at one of Holloway Global's private executive apartments overlooking downtown Charlotte. The room was quiet, safe, comfortable. When the elevator doors opened, she walked inside carrying the same nervous smile I'd seen for years. Then she saw me. Mom. Confusion covered her face. What are you doing here? I slowly stood. I asked Julian to bring you. She looked from me to Julian. What's going on? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I placed one photograph on the table. I'm kissing Chloe. Clara stared at it. She blinked once, twice, then picked it up with trembling fingers. No, I placed another photograph beside it. Paris. Another. The hotel. Every picture shattered another piece of the fantasy she'd spent years protecting. She shook her head. No. There has to be some explanation. I hated hearing those words, because I knew them. Victims always search for explanations. Anything except the truth. Tears filled her eyes. He travels for business. Maybe she's... Her voice disappeared. She couldn't even finish the sentence. Deep inside, she already knew. I quietly placed another folder in front of her. Open it. She hesitated, then slowly flipped through the documents. The first page, Blue Lantern Logistics. Second page, corporate registration. Third page, loan agreements. Fourth, bank transfers. Finally, she reached the signature page. Her own name, signed dozens of times. She frowned. I don't remember signing these. You didn't. She looked at me. What? You never signed them. They're forged. Her breathing became uneven. What does this mean? Julian answered gently. It means someone used your identity. She kept reading. Every page made her paler. I don't understand. I've never seen any of this. Then she reached the final section. Federal liability, personal guarantees, criminal responsibility. She stopped breathing for several seconds. If this company commits fraud, I'm responsible. I nodded slowly. Yes. She dropped the papers. Oh my God, she covered her mouth. Oh my God, then something inside her finally broke. Years of fear, years of humiliation, years of pretending, collapsed all at once. She fell into the chair. I thought I just wasn't a good wife. I kept trying harder. I cooked everything he liked. I stopped seeing my friends. I stopped buying clothes. I apologized even when I didn't know what I'd done. Fresh tears rolled down her face. I thought if I loved him enough, he would love me back. I walked around the table, then wrapped my arms around my daughter. She buried her face against my shoulder exactly like she had when she was 6 years old. I failed you, she cried. No, I gently stroked her hair. You survived. Those are two very different things. She cried harder. I should have listened to you. I should have left. You leave now. She slowly looked up. What if he destroys the evidence? What if everyone believes him? What if I go to prison? I gently wiped away her tears. Listen to me. You are not alone anymore. Not today. Not ever again. She squeezed my hand. What do we do? I looked toward Julian, then back at Clara. We make Liam tell the truth. She frowned. How? Well, let him confess. Julian opened a small case resting on the table. Inside lay an elegant pearl necklace. Clara looked confused. It's beautiful. I smiled. It also contains one of the smallest recording devices our security division has. She stared at it. You want me to wear this? Less. And go home? A fear immediately returned to her face. Hell no, something's wrong. No. You'll do exactly what you've always done. What if he hurts me? That question nearly shattered my heart. The fact that she had to ask it told me everything. I took both her hands. The second you believe you're in danger, you leave. My security team will be watching. So will I. She looked down at the necklace, then slowly nodded. I can do this, no. I smiled gently. You don't have to be fearless. You only have to be brave for one more night. Clara took a long breath, then fastened the pearl necklace around her neck. For the first time in years, there wasn't hopelessness in her eyes. There was determination. And somewhere deep inside, Liam Vance had absolutely no idea that the woman he believed he had completely controlled was about to become the witness who would destroy him forever. That evening, I sat inside an unmarked surveillance van parked 3 blocks away from the Vance estate. The sky above Charlotte had already turned dark. Streetlights cast long shadows across the quiet neighborhood. Inside the van, no one spoke. Julian sat beside me with a laptop connected to our encrypted communication system. 2 former federal investigators monitored Lev GPS tracking. Another security specialist watched cameras covering every exit from the estate. Every second felt heavier than the last. Then, a tiny green light appeared on Julian's screen. The microphone is active. Clara had entered the house. I closed my eyes for one brief moment. Please be safe. The front door opened. Through my earpiece I heard Liam's voice almost immediately. "Where have you been?" His tone wasn't worried. It wasn't loving. It sounded like a manager questioning an employee. "I stopped by my mother's house." Clara answered exactly as we had practiced. Her voice remained calm. I silently admired her courage. Only 12 hours earlier she had believed she was powerless. Now she was walking into danger to save herself. Liam scoffed. Did she finally agree to sell that ridiculous workshop? No. Silence. Then the sound of breaking glass exploded through my headphones. Someone inside the van instinctively looked toward me. I knew exactly what had happened. Liam had thrown his whiskey glass. His favorite method of intimidation. Not striking people. Just reminding them he could. She still refuses. His breathing grew heavier. She's making my life impossible. Clara stayed quiet. She had learned something during years of emotional abuse. Silence often made Liam speak even more. Exactly as we hoped. "You have any idea what's happening?" Liam continued pacing across the room. Holloway Global destroyed our supply chain. Our investors are panicking. Our board members are asking questions. He laughed bitterly. "And your wonderful mother refuses to help." Clara spoke softly. "Maybe she has her reasons." "My reasons?" Liam snapped. "I don't care about her reasons. I need collateral. I need cash. I need that property." He slammed another object onto a table. "If she won't sell willingly, I'll make sure she regrets it." I gripped the edge of my seat. Julian quietly placed one hand on my arm. "Wet?" I nodded. "Barely." A few seconds passed. Then Clara gently asked the question we had rehearsed dozens of times. "Liam, what?" "I found some documents." Another silence. Longer this time. "What documents?" There was a company. Blue Lantern Logistics. Inside the surveillance van, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Everything depended on what happened next. Liam laughed. But it wasn't natural. It sounded forced. "You shouldn't be looking through business paperwork. My name is on those papers. So. I don't remember signing them." Another pause, then his voice became colder than I'd ever heard before. "It doesn't matter." My heart started beating faster. Clara carefully continued. "It matters to me." "Why is my signature everywhere?" He sighed impatiently. "Because someone had to sign." I never agreed. "You didn't have to." Silence filled the van. Julian immediately began typing notes. Mattered every sentence could become evidence. Clara swallowed. "Did you forge my signature?" A no answer. Then, a slow laugh, dark, cruel, almost amused. "So what if I did?" Every investigator inside the van looked toward Julian. He quietly raised one finger. "Keep listening. Don't interrupt. You would have signed eventually." Liam continued. "I simply saved time." The Clara whispered. "You used my identity. I used my wife. There's a difference." "No." He laughed again. "You really don't understand business." Clara remained perfectly calm. "What happens if Blue Lantern is investigated?" This time, Liam answered immediately. "Then you'll go to prison." Those 6 words sucked every bit of air from my lungs. Even though we already knew the truth, hearing him admit it made my blood run cold. "What?" Clara whispered. "You heard me. You own the company. I don't." "You do on paper. I never created it. But your signature did." He sounded almost proud of himself. "If investigators come, they'll arrest you. You'll become the face of the fraud." "I'll tell them everything." He laughed louder. "And who will believe you?" "The documents say otherwise. The bank records say otherwise. You guaranteed every loan. You approved every transfer. You signed every page." His voice lowered. "You'll spend 20 years in prison." "I'll walk away." I closed my eyes. For one brief second, I wanted to storm into that mansion. But Julian was right. We needed everything. Every confession. Every lie. Every threat. Clara asked one final question. Why a silence? Long, heavy. Then Liam answered with absolute honesty. "Because you're replaceable." Those words hit harder than any scream. "You were useful. You looked innocent. Everyone trusted you. You were the perfect person to blame. And after everything settled, I would have divorced you." My hands trembled, not from sadness anymore, from fury. Clara spoke so quietly I almost couldn't hear her. "Is there someone else?" Liam didn't even hesitate. "Les, you've known her for years. Chloe understands ambition. Unlike you. We're building a future together." The room inside the mansion became silent again. Finally, Clara asked. "So none of our marriage was real?" He answered with brutal indifference. "It was useful. Nothing else. Just, it was useful." Inside the surveillance van, no one spoke. The recording had captured everything: forgery, fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, emotional abuse, financial crimes, even motive. Julian slowly removed one headphone. His voice remained calm. I nodded. "Multiple federal felonies. Our legal team can send everything to the Department of Justice tonight." One of the investigators smiled. "It's over." I looked toward the glowing lights of the Vance estate. No, it's just beginning. At that exact moment, the front door opened again. Our GPS showed Clara leaving the house. 30 seconds later, she climbed into one of our waiting security vehicles parked around the corner. The moment she closed the door, she burst into tears. Not quiet tears. Years of pain poured out all at once. I kept believing him, she whispered. I kept thinking if I loved him more, he'd finally love me. I climbed into the back seat beside her, without saying a word. I wrapped my arms around my daughter. She cried against my shoulder exactly like she had when she was a little girl frightened by thunderstorms. I wasted years, she sobbed. No. I gently wiped away her tears. You survived years. That's different. She looked at me. What happens now? I smiled for the first time that night. Tomorrow, Liam Vance is hosting the biggest charity gala of his career. She nodded. I know. He's expecting wealthy investors. And one very important guest. She frowned. What guest? The mysterious chairwoman of Holloway Global. Realization slowly appeared across her face. Her eyes widened. Mom, I nodded. Tomorrow night. For the first time, the entire city is going to discover exactly who Eleanor Holloway really is. Julian smiled from the front seat. Our invitation arrived this afternoon. I reached into my handbag and removed the elegant black and gold invitation. Across the front were embossed gold letters. Vance Manufacturing Charity Gala Special Guest, Chairwoman of Holloway Global Components. I slowly closed the invitation. Then looked out the window at the dazzling lights of downtown Charlotte. For years, the Vance family had laughed at my old clothes, mocked my little workshop, insulted my late husband's legacy, humiliated my daughter. Tomorrow, they would learn one unforgettable lesson. Never judge someone's worth by the clothes they wear, because the woman they called a poor mechanic was about to walk into their ballroom, not as a guest, not as a victim, but as the billionaire who owned the company keeping their empire alive. And before the night was over, every lie they had built their lives upon would collapse in front of the entire city. The following morning felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, Clara slept through the night, not because her problems had disappeared, but because she finally knew the truth. Sometimes the truth hurts, but lies destroy people. Truth gives them something lies never can, a chance to fight back. While Clara rested at one of Holloway Global's private guest residences, my legal team worked through the night. Every document was organized. Every financial record was verified. Every forged signature was examined by handwriting experts. The audio recording from the previous evening had already been duplicated onto multiple encrypted drives. No one would ever be able to destroy the evidence. Just before sunrise, Julian walked into my office carrying a fresh cup of coffee. We're ready. I looked up. The Department of Justice. They'll receive everything after tonight. The FBI standing by. The SEC. Already reviewing Vance Manufacturing's financial disclosures. And the board of directors. Julian smiled. They've called an emergency meeting. I slowly stood. Good. Today isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. That evening, Charlotte's most influential business leaders gathered inside the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Champagne flowed freely. Live music echoed through the elegant hall. Reporters photographed every arriving guest, investors, bankers, politicians, corporate executives. Everyone wanted to meet the mysterious chairwoman of Holloway Global. Liam stood proudly near the entrance wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo. From a distance, no one could tell his company was only hours away from financial collapse. Beside him stood Beatrice. She greeted every guest with the same artificial smile she always wore. Meanwhile, Clara quietly stood several feet behind them. This time, she wasn't afraid. She already knew the truth, and she knew this would be the last night she ever pretended. At exactly 8 o'clock, a black Bentley slowly stopped outside the hotel. The valet opened the rear door. The ballroom entrance became silent. One by one, guests turned toward the arriving vehicle. First stepped Julian Hayes, then several members of Holloway Global's executive board. Finally, I stepped out. Gone were the faded cardigans. Gone were the old work boots. Gone was the quiet widow everyone believed they knew. Instead, I wore an elegant emerald evening gown, simple, sophisticated, confident, not because expensive clothes make someone important, but because tonight, the truth deserved to be seen. Hundreds of eyes followed us as we entered the ballroom. Whispers spread across the room. Who is she? Is that the chairwoman? I've never seen her before. Then, Beatrice looked toward the entrance. The smile disappeared from her face. Her eyes widened. She blinked repeatedly. She whispered, "No." She hurried across the ballroom toward me. "Eleanor," she looked completely confused. "What are you doing here? You can't be here. This invitation is for the chairwoman." I calmly smiled. "It is." She frowned. "No. You don't understand. This event is for billionaires. I know. You'll embarrass yourself? I don't think so. She reached toward my arm. I gently stepped backward. Please don't touch me. She looked irritated. Security. Before anyone moved, Julian calmly walked onto the stage. He adjusted the microphone. The room became silent. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. We would like to welcome our company's most valued strategic partner. Liam immediately straightened his jacket. Finally, his financial savior had arrived. Julian continued. Please join me in welcoming the founder, CEO, and chairwoman of Holloway Global Components, Mrs. Eleanor Holloway. For several seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. Every spotlight turned toward me. The ballroom erupted into shocked whispers. Liam stared at me, his face lost all color, his mouth opened, but no words came out. Finally, he whispered, "No, that's impossible." I slowly walked toward the stage. Every step echoed across the marble floor. When I reached the microphone, I looked directly at Liam. You spent years believing I was nothing more than an old mechanic. I never corrected you. I wanted to see how you treated people you believed couldn't help you. I paused. What I discovered broke my heart. I turned toward the audience. My late husband and I built our first repair shop with borrowed tools and impossible dreams. That small workshop eventually became Holloway Global Components. We never forgot where we came from, but never looked down on honest work. But unfortunately, not everyone shares those values. Lam suddenly rushed forward. Eleanor, please. There has to be some misunderstanding. I calmly looked at him. There isn't. Julian pressed a button on the presentation remote. The massive LED screens behind me came alive. The first slide displayed financial records. The second showed Blue Lantern logistics. The third displayed offshore transfers. Then came photographs of Liam and Chloe Mercer. The ballroom became completely silent. Investors stared in disbelief. Board members exchanged nervous glances. Reporters quickly lifted their cameras. Liam's breathing became heavier. This is fabricated, he shouted. It's fake. Julian calmly shook his head. Every document has already been verified by independent forensic accountants. Liam turned toward Clara. Say something. Tell them this isn't true. Clara slowly walked forward. For the first time since marrying Liam, she looked directly into his eyes. I believed every lie you told me. I defended you. I blamed myself. I thought I wasn't enough. Tears filled her eyes. But now I know. You never loved me. You only needed someone to sacrifice. The room remained silent. Then Julian pressed another button. Liam's own voice echoed through the ballroom speakers. Yes, I forged your signature. If anyone goes to prison, it'll be you. You're replaceable. Our marriage was useful. The recording ended. No explanation, no defense, just silence. Several board members immediately stood up. One of them spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Effective immediately, Liam Vance is removed as Chief Executive Officer. Another investor stepped away from him, then another. Within seconds, he was standing completely alone. Just then, 2 FBI agents entered the ballroom. Behind them came several federal investigators. One agent approached Liam. Mr. Liam Vance, you are under investigation for fraud, forgery, identity theft, conspiracy, wire fraud, and multiple federal financial crimes. You have the right to remain silent. Liam looked desperately toward Beatrice. She took one step backward, then another. She wasn't trying to save her son, she was trying to save herself. The agents placed Liam in handcuffs. As they escorted him away, he looked back toward Clara. I'm sorry. Those were the first honest words he had spoken in years. Clara simply shook her head. I already forgave myself. I don't need to forgive you. He lowered his head, then disappeared through the ballroom doors. A few weeks later, Vance Manufacturing officially entered bankruptcy. Holloway Global legally purchased the remaining assets. But instead of reopening another factory, we transformed the headquarters into a vocational education and community training center. Young mechanics, electricians, engineers, single parents rebuilding their lives, veterans returning home, people who simply needed another chance. They all found opportunity inside the same building where arrogance once ruled. The old workshop Richard and I built remained exactly where it had always been. Every Saturday morning, Clara joined me there. She laughed again, she smiled again. She even learned how to rebuild an old engine, just like her father once taught her. For the first time in many years, she wasn't surviving. She was living. And every time I watched her smile, I knew every difficult decision had been worth it. Story summary: a simple trip back to retrieve my forgotten reading glasses exposed a heartbreaking truth. My daughter Clara was being emotionally abused by her husband, Liam, and his mother, Beatrice. As I quietly investigated, I uncovered an even darker conspiracy. Liam had secretly forged Clara's signature, created a shell company called Blue Lantern Logistics, and planned to frame her for massive financial crimes, while he escaped with millions of dollars and his secret mistress. Using my hidden identity as the billionaire founder of Holloway Global Components, I gathered undeniable evidence, exposed Liam's crimes during his own charity gala, and watched justice finally catch up with everyone who had betrayed my daughter. Story lesson: never judge someone's worth by their appearance, job, or background. Real wealth is built on integrity, not arrogance. Emotional abuse often hides behind polite smiles and expensive homes, but the truth always leaves clues. Most importantly, no one deserves to stay in a relationship where love is replaced by control, fear, and manipulation. Sometimes, the strongest act of love is finding the courage to walk away. And sometimes, justice comes when you least expect it. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done if you were in Eleanor's position? Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.